Hi, Oza here. In this talk, I'm going to be teaching you why interviewing is the most important skill for success today. And the reason is simple. If you can't get the job, you can't do the job. And what I'm going to show you is the 5 interviews that one goes through in order to get a job offer. Resume, phone interviews, face-to-face interviews, reference checks, and the final interview and the decision that is made when you get the job offer. So I hope you enjoy the talk, and if you have any questions, comments, or if you'd like me to come and give this talk to your organization, let me know. Enjoy the... Okay, Don, you ready?
Ready when you are.
Okay. Tonight we are happy to have Oza here giving a talk on the importance of developing and mastering your interviewing skills to not only get a job, but also to get ahead in your career. Jay has over 25 years of corporate experience in the software industry in technical, marketing, and sales roles, and 10 years of experience as a business and executive coach. In addition, Jay has been working as a volunteer for the past 3 years for Hire Heroes USA, helping military veterans and their spouses get good jobs by coaching them on interviewing. For his outstanding service, he received an award last fall from Hire Heroes. Lastly, Jay's the author of a book, Winning Speech Moments, which all of you will be receiving as an ebook if you put your email address in the sign-in sheet. So let's all welcome Jay for being here this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Lori, for that wonderful introduction. So let's just get started right away. By you coming here, you essentially hired me to do a job. That's what you're doing. This is a job for me. And there are 5 fundamental questions that I have to ask myself that applies to this job and the job that you're looking for a full-time for a company. So the first question is, do I understand the job? And I understand the job in the sense that you're here for me to provide you with actionable information, tips and techniques so that you can get a job immediately and hopefully after that get ahead in your career. So that's how I understand my job. So the second question then is, can I do the job? And as Lori mentioned in her intro, I have 25 years experience, and in those 25 years, like some of you, I've been hired, fired a number of times. So I know what it's like going through that whole cycle and looking for a job and things like that, the interviewing process. And then I left the corporate world about 10 years ago, and since then I've been a business and executive coach. And I work with, as she mentioned, with military veterans as a volunteer, but I also coach individuals and executives who are looking to get ahead in their career. The third question is, do I want the job? I just couldn't wait this morning to get here, so yes. The fourth question is, can I do even more? And as she mentioned that if you signed in, I'm going to send you my ebook along with this presentation and some resources like a checklist and workbook. Now, the book is something that will become very helpful to you after you get the job, even while you're looking for a job. And this will help you to get ahead, because what I talk about in the book is high-stakes speaking. And this is kind of speaking that you do when you're in the corporate environment, whether you're in a meeting or you're giving a formal presentation. And that's what I cover in this book. And the last question is, am I fun to be around? I think so. I think, I smile a lot. I use a lot of gestures. I'm pretty passionate about the topic that I'm talking about. So, but at the end, if you don't leave in the middle, I guess it will be fun to be around. Yeah, welcome to the talk. We're just getting started.
Sure, great.
So those are the 5 fundamental questions that apply when you're looking for a job. Any questions that are asked during an interview, they kind of fall into one of those buckets. Okay, and those 5 questions again are, do you understand the job? Can you do the job? Do you want the job? Can you do even more? And are you fun to be around? So we're going to talk about that, how it applies when you're looking for a job. We'll cover that. That's the recurring theme. before I continue, let me kind of spend some time on this part right here. And I don't know why this is not working, but okay, because it's not turned on. There you go. So why did I title this, if you notice, and some of you probably paid attention, that's why you're here. Why is this the most important skill for success today? I didn't do that to get more people to attend. There's a reason for that. And one of the things that I want to point out here is that we're today getting overloaded with the number of skills that we have to know. And they are both hard skills and soft skills. By hard skills like coding, graphics design, these are hard skills that companies hire you to come in and do the job. But then there are both a lot of soft skills that you have to know, like communication, collaboration, listening. I mean, you name it. I can spend quite a bit of time going through all the soft skills that you have to know. But there's one thing you have to remember. If you can't get the job, you can't do the job. It's that simple. If you can't get the job, you can't do the job, no matter what skills you have, no matter how good you are, no matter what degrees, credentials, and certificates you have. It's just not going to matter. That's why interviewing is the most important skill. And that's what this presentation is all about. That if you cannot interview well, it's really hard to get a good job today. And definitely, it's hard to get ahead in your career. Okay, so that's going to be the main idea of this talk. That this is one of the most important skills. And at the end, you can tell me whether you agree or not. This is the most important skill. Before I continue, let me thank Nicole, Lori, and David who helped me set everything up here. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend an hour here with me. Thirdly, if anybody here from Old Bridge? Yes, so I want to thank you taxpayers for supporting this library to build a stronger community. And I think that libraries are very important for this type of talk, both from my point of view to come and share my ideas, and also for you to come here and listen to me. Okay, so I want to thank you all for supporting the library. Before I move on, and I will move on from this slide, I want to point out something here. Below my name, I point out, this is sort of my tagline. I guide people thrive on high-stakes stage. And then below that I put down, this is what my job function is like. I'm a writer, a speaker, an executive coach. Now, you really don't care about this one. That's what I do. What you care about is this one. How do I guide people thrive on high-stakes stage? Whether it's job interviews, could be a sales presentation, or it could be a formal presentation. This becomes a conversation extender. That's what I like to call it. Like if you ever are in a networking event or you're meeting somebody and they ask you, so Jan, what do you do? If you say, I'm a software engineer or something like that, there's not much they can do with that. But if you say, you know, Jay, what I really do is I get projects done. Now I'm interested. Oh, really? You get projects done. So now I'm engaging in a conversation with you, and that opens up possibilities. So one of the things I always coach is this is very important, how you introduce yourself. And most people don't do that. And as a result, they're not opening up any potential opportunities that may exist. So I want you to keep this in mind. Number one thing to take away is how you introduce yourself. Because if you are just saying, I'm a speaker, okay, but so what? That doesn't mean anything. I'm a writer, okay, so I write. But this one, I'm producing some kind of result that you might be interested in, okay? So keep that in mind. And then, as I mentioned, if you signed in, you will all receive my book as an ebook, along with some other resources. Okay, so interviewing is a super skill. Just like any skill, there are a lot of other sub-skills that are below that. And I'll go through this quickly, and don't get intimidated. You need to know how to market well. This is very important. Marketing is, without marketing, nobody knows who you are. So marketing becomes very important. Then you have to know how to sell. Then you know how to perform. Then there's a negotiation part. And then the last one is risk-taking. Now, marketing means that you need to have a website presence so that people can find out about you, social media presence. People need to know you. A lot of people that are looking for a job, they just simply don't have this. So they cannot market. Market also means that, when you're talking to somebody, they need to know what you do, what kind of value that you provide. So you're constantly have to be in the marketing mode. Today, if you're not in the marketing mode, you kind of get lost. I know a lot of people find that really hard, when I find it hard. But marketing is something that we all need to do, whether it's for a job, whether you're working as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs have to market, otherwise they just are not going to be in business. And you almost have to take the mode of being an entrepreneur when you're looking for a job. And then you're always selling. People have to know what kind of value are you going to be providing to them. So you always have to be in a sales mode. This one is very important. Performance is very important today because people do not have time to spend a lot of time on what you do. If you perform well, that persuades. In a sense, performance is truth. I mean, when you watch television, they never show you any kind of hearings the congressional hearing. The media will always say that, this so-and-so person performed well. So performance is very important. Now, you don't need to be an actor. So when I use the word performance, you think like, oh my God, I need acting skills. You don't need acting skills, you just need to have some kind of a performance. And we'll go through that, how you can perform. And then you are constantly negotiating. Now remember, all these skills are not sequential. You're all using it together. They're all combinations. You're always using it together. Now, you know who has this skill? The person who really has this skill, and you may not like him, but I have to mention his name, is Donald Trump. Donald Trump has interviewing skill. And he has to, otherwise he couldn't be president. He knows he's always marketing. Even right now, he's the president, he's marketing. He's constantly selling, he's always performing at his rallies, he's negotiating right now with China, and he's always taking risks. He has this skill, and that's why he's the president, whether you like him or not. And you don't have to like Donald Trump, but you can do what he's doing to get a job, okay? Because he's proven it, that he can get a job. Now with interviewing skill, what it does is, because you have this skill, if you develop it and master it, it creates options. And when you create options, you have power. It's simple as that. So this is a skill that is like a lifelong skill, but you can learn some of the parts like resume or phone interview, face-to-face. But eventually, you don't want to stop there. You really want to get good at it. Because this is the skill that will open up options for you. And when you have options, you have power to decide what you want to do. And that's why this skill, in my opinion, is the most important skill. Okay, so now let's get down to each of you. When you're looking for a job, the first question you should ask is, how do you hire? Because if you're not answering that question, then you're going to have difficulty understanding how somebody's going to be hiring you. So we hire all the time, by the way. I just recently had a project, a chimney project, and what I'm looking for is a person, there are a lot of contractors and there are a lot of them don't know what they're doing. So I want to basically interview these people, and whoever performs the best in understanding the job, demonstrating that he or she can get the job done quickly, cost effectively, and with high quality, and provides a great customer experience. That's the person that I'm going to hire. That's me. But that's the question that each of you should be asking. How do you hire? Because if you're not asking that, then how are you going to be prepared when you are interviewing, when somebody's hiring you? So keep that in mind. Okay, so now I'm going to drill down to the 5 interviews that we all go through. Now these are, each of them, 5 separate interviews. In some of them, you're not there. Like a resume is an interview. You're just not there. Then there's the phone interviews that you go through. Then there's the face-to-face interviews. Then this reference check is somebody's interviewing you through somebody else. So you're still being interviewed. And then there could be a final interview, and then there's going to be a decision time. thing to keep in mind is until you get a job offer, you don't have a job offer. So you're always in the interview mode till you get the job offer. Until then, you are interviewing. So if you think like, okay, my face-to-face interview went well, and now what are you going to do? I'm just going to wait till they call me? No, you're not done yet. They haven't given you an offer. So you are still interviewing till you get the job offer. Okay? So we're going to go into each of them in more detail now. But before we do it, just want to make sure we understand the 5 questions. And the first, do you understand the job? Can you do the job? Do you want the job? Can you do even more? And are you fun to be around? So these are the 5 fundamental questions that you have to keep in mind. Because otherwise what happens is when you're looking for a job, you get bombarded with like 50 questions you have to master to get a job. They're not 50 questions. They all fall into one of these 5 questions. This is the most important. You've got to nail this one and this one. These are like nice to have because eventually these are questions that are not directly asked. So these are questions that the interviewer is asking himself or herself. They're not going to ask you directly, do you understand the job? No, you have to show them. Let me make sure I understand the job like that. And let that person, the interviewer, validate it before you can move on to the next question. Okay, so I'm going to now move to so let's get to the resume. Now, I always get this question asked about the resume. Jay, what's a good resume? And I say, the good resume is the one that gets a company to call you. It's simple as that. There's no format, there's no words or anything. So I'm very careful about telling people whether their resume is good or not. It all comes down to is the purpose of a resume is that when you send your resume, you should get calls from the recruiter, internal, external, whatever recruiter. If you're not getting calls, then the first thing you have to do is tweak your resume. And if you're not getting calls, there could be 3 things wrong. Either you're applying to a company where you're not a good fit or they're not even actively looking. Second is you may not have the skill set or the background that they're looking for. And third is that maybe you're not representing your background and your skills in a way that resonates with the recruiter, internal recruiter. So keep that in mind, that the purpose of a resume is to get a call. Now, a resume is not a static document. You have to constantly tweak it. Tweak it for the position, and sometimes you may have to tweak it for the individuals that you're sending the resume to. It's work, but that's what you have to do, because looking for a job is work. And what's making this even more difficult today is that there are these programs that most companies use today called application tracking system. And that's a software, most of it is cloud-based, that is going to select keywords and rank you before you get selected so that somebody contacts you. So how do you deal with that? You really have to look at the job description and look at all the keywords that they're using, and you may have to tweak your resume so that those keywords show up. So like if they put down Excel is a must, they just don't want Excel at this point. What they're really looking for is specifics of Excel. So you have to say, I have VLOOKUP experience, I have macros, I have doing graphs in Excel, macros, or whatever, right? Pivot tables. You have to get really granular because this is not going to be looked at by an individual now. It's going to be looked at by a program. And program is going to key in on. So when they put down particular skill as a must, like if they put project management, you got to get into the details of project management because that's what the program is going to be looking for. So when you're just sending a resume to a website based on the job description, this resume is very specific for the program that you're writing. It's not the kind of resume that an individual looking at it is going to make a lot of sense. It's going to be too detailed, but you need that if the program is looking at it. But then you need a second resume where a human being is going to look at. And that one is going to be different because that one, the person may not spend much time looking at it. So there, as you put down that, like I just gave you an example, like if you're in a software industry and you're saying that you can get projects done then all your experience has to emphasize that. How did you get the projects done? What was the particular problem that you had where you were working? What was the solution? What was your role? What was the outcome? And what kind of lessons did you learn? So it has to be readable, because when they see that in this resume that you know how to get projects done, suddenly whoever's reading it says, let me see, how did this person get projects done? So you want to buy more time, because people don't really spend a lot of time reading resumes. So you want them to read more. And if they're reading more, then they're going to call you, okay? But also today, I always say the best resume is no resume. So what does that mean? That means that you need to demonstrate that you have some real insights where you have worked. And how do you do that? You have to write blogs. People are familiar with blogs? Like, you can go on LinkedIn. It's like an article that you write, but you go on LinkedIn and write an article. Because if you work anywhere, no matter what job, even you could have worked at McDonald's, you have insights. Most people don't ever write about that. And when you don't write about that, that other person doesn't know how much more you can do for them. You're not adding any insight that you've learned anything from your job. So it's very important to write a blog. And video, that's not that difficult today. We all have a smartphone. You can record a video and put it on YouTube. This is a little bit more involved, booklet, but it's still not that difficult. Books, I wrote a book, I didn't bring it, but books you can write. Speeches, so I'm giving this speech, and as you can see, Don here is recording it. Why? So I can put this on YouTube. Because as I always say, that if you give a talk and it doesn't appear on YouTube, did you actually give a talk? The answer is no, because only you people know I gave a talk. But I don't want only you people to know I gave a talk. I want the whole world to know that I gave a talk, okay? Maybe that's not a good thing, but we'll find out. So, again, the point here is that you're always marketing. Okay, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but if you're not marketing, then how would somebody, with all the noise around, why would they pick you? So you got to get comfortable with marketing. And I know it's hard, because these are things that we don't learn in school, but these are the things that we have to do. We have to start getting good at it. And they always say in Chinese that 2 times to do it was maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and the second best time is now. So if you're not doing marketing, start now, because it'll pay off. Just to give you a point, I just went to a National Speakers Association event last week, and there was this guy, maybe you've heard of him, his name is Jeffrey Hazlett, and he's a real marketing pro, and he's constantly marketing. So I said, let me test this out. So immediately I sent him an email saying, hey Jeffrey, this is a technique that you can use. Jeffrey, I got 5 questions that I want to ask you. Would you be open to answering them? And if you answer them, I will post it as a blog and promote you. He replied immediately. Bring it on. So I'm working on that now. Now I got a lot of homework to do here. I have to go through his website. I have to look at his video, and he's got a lot of stuff there. But now, these are the kind of things you have to do. So right now I have 3 people that I have sent this request, and they've all agreed to answer this. So this is something you can all do. So if you want to network with somebody, don't ask them for a job. Say, hey, by the way, I would like to, I have 5 questions that I want if you can answer them, if you're open to it. And then just post it on LinkedIn. And one thing is, everybody likes being promoted, okay? There's not one person, if they want to be successful, they all want to be promoted. So if there is a manager out there saying, hey, I am writing about this, would you be interested in answering these 5 questions? Maybe it's project management, maybe it's vice president in some particular industry. If they want to get ahead, they'll say yes. And if they're not saying yes, then maybe they're pretty much stuck in their career. But if they're successful, they will all say yes. That's what I'm finding out. And I wish I had done that much earlier. Okay, so in this resume, there's only really the main question that somebody's probably asking. Remember, this is an interview and you're not there, is this: can you do the job? So if I'm looking at the resume, and I see a lot of resumes, and a lot of times I can't make sense out of them. I have no idea what that person can really do. So the burden is on all of us. When we're sending a resume, The simple question that you need to be able, that resume should be able to answer is, can you do the job? And the best way to test it out is just give the job description and your resume to different people, and then ask them. If I give you this job description, this my resume, how would you answer that? Can I get this job done? And if they say yes, then maybe your resume is good. But like I said, there's no such thing as good resume. Good resume is the one that gets you calls. So you have to constantly keep changing things around till it starts working for you. Okay? So the objective here is to get the call. So let's move to the next slide. Phone interviews, I like to use this analogy. This is when now things start getting very interesting. Phone interviews are like pregame in football. This is where you should be spending a lot of time, and a lot of people don't. This is where a lot of mistakes get made when it comes to job interviews. They're just happy to talk to a recruiter, and the next thing they know is they're talking to the manager, and then at some point they get to the face-to-face interview. But in the process, you're essentially doing what everybody else is doing. What you want to do is you want to come across different. And when you're different, you get noticed. And also, what you want to do is you want to gather intelligence. Because when you go for a face-to-face interview, that's when you're really going to perform. And if you're taking a face-to-face interview and you don't walk away with a job offer, then something went wrong. Because there's no reason why somebody would have you come in for a face-to-face interview and you end up not getting the job. Why? What happened? And most of the time what I find is, it's this face. So, because remember, you're at home. You can take a recruiter, the first call you get from a recruiter, and before you even get the call from a recruiter, you want to make sure that when he or she sends you an email, you send that other resume, the one for the human being that you've written. Okay, so that person now has that resume. And also, before you get on the call, you want to find out what are the 3 things the recruiter wants to talk to you about, so you can prepare ahead of time. You don't want to get on the call cold and saying, okay, let's talk, because that recruiter is not going to be spending that much time with you. You give that recruiter 30 minutes saying, qualify me for this job. And once the recruiter says, yes, we'd like to move to the next step, at that point, the control is on your side. You say, not that fast. I would like to talk to the people that are working in that department. So you want to talk to them before you actually talk to the hiring manager, because you want to gather as much intelligence so that when you talk to the hiring manager, you already talked to quite a few people before you even talk to the hiring manager. You have the names of some of the people you'll end up working with, based on the information I got, and you can validate things. Like I said, you don't want to get too anxious and say, okay, I've got the phone interview, let me go to the face-to-face interview because that's where I'm going to get the job. Because the face-to-face interview is really where you're going to be performing. And if you have a lot of good information that you have gathered in this phase, then you're going to do really well in the next, and I'll go through this, I'll use the football analogy. So there are 3 questions that come up here. Do you understand the job? Can you do the job? Do you want the job? So when you're dealing on a phone interview with somebody, these are the 3 questions that matter at this step. Okay, these are the 3 questions. The other questions don't apply because they'll apply when you have a face-to-face interview. So you want to validate it. Let me make sure I understand the job. So let's say you go from a recruiter, then you say, can I talk to somebody that I'll end up working with who's in the department? You talk to that person, gather more intelligence. Here's another thing. The reason you're gathering all this intelligence is, and I'm going to show you, that when you appear for a face-to-face interview, you're actually not even interviewing anymore. You're actually doing the job. So you're going to go in with I call it the 90-day plan, because companies today are scared when they hire people. They don't want to know, like, how long is it going to take before this person gets up to speed? So if you have gathered all that intelligence and you put this 90-day, which I call it the 90-day value delivery plan, the person, you become riskless or risk-free because you already know exactly what you're going to be doing the next 90 days when they hire you. And companies today get scared when they think like they have to train you. So you act like that you're going to be you're going to be productive the first day on the job. That impresses people that are hiring you. And the way you do that is in this phase. Because at this step, you have nothing to lose because they haven't offered you the job. Okay, so what you're doing here is qualifying. They're qualifying you. You have to qualify them and the job. And some of the information, because the recruiter is not going, I don't know about you folks, but recruiters don't know that much. They just want to move you to the next phase, and his or her job is done at that point. But that doesn't help you much. So you want the recruiter, make the recruiter your friend, and get the recruiter to set up a call with somebody else before you talk to the hiring manager, and you may need to talk to another person. 2, I think, is enough. And now you got enough information saying, you know, now I'm ready to talk to the hiring manager. And when you talk to the hiring manager, you now know a lot. You know the name of the recruiter, you know the name of the people that are reporting to the hiring manager, so that when you talk to the hiring manager, it looks like, wow, this guy knows a lot of things about this company and the people that are already working here. That's what I would do, okay? So these are some of the things. So these are questions I'm going to send you. I'm not going to go through these questions. You can go through them, and you can probably come up with your own questions. So the main thing I want to emphasize in this presentation is that these are some of the ideas that I have. What you need to do is, you already have many of the ideas, because you don't look like people who have just started interviewing for the first time. You've been doing this for many times, so you have a lot of ideas. You can take some of the ideas and tweak it, or you can take them and adapt it, okay? But at the end, the ideas that are good are the ones that work for you. So I'm not going to say these are the best ideas. The ideas that work are the best ideas for you, okay? Okay, so then we get to so let's say you went through that step. You got the resume, they called you, and now you said, okay, I went through these phone interviews. You interviewed let's say three people, and now you interviewed the manager, and the manager says, okay, you know, we like you. We'd like you to come and have a face-to-face interview. So now the face-to-face interview is where you're going to go and close the deal. That's where you have to close the deal. But you can't just close the deal because you've been getting information. So first you need the message. You cannot go into a face-to-face interview without having a message. So if you're in the IT field, if you can't read it, what it says is, this is your message. You get projects done. Okay? That's your message. No matter what, even if you don't get the job, but they better not tell you that you didn't have a message. You got to have a message. That message, it's almost like you're confusing them because they are interviewing. Because these people that are interviewing you, they got other jobs. They're busy with what they're doing. The burden is on you to have a message and be able to clearly explain to them what your message is. So if you say that you know how to get projects done, then you have to explain to them throughout the interview, how do you get projects done? Where have you gotten projects done? What has the company benefited from you getting projects done? But the one thing you have to do is, let me explain to you how I got projects done. Let me show you how I got this project done. They better remember that, they better associate getting projects done with you, that you are the one who can get projects done, because that's what you want to convey at the end of the day. Also, you want to find out what are the 3 main things they want to talk about. Because sometimes you go into these interviews, they haven't even read your resume. So you want to make sure that they have really read your resume closely and they have specific things they want to discuss with you. And here's the thing. When companies are hiring you, they're making an investment. If it's a full-time job, a permanent full-time job, right? They're making an investment. And according to some research, they found that when a particular hire doesn't work out, the opportunity cost for them is 15 times a base salary. So they take this very seriously. But the one thing that most candidates don't take seriously, that if you don't, you're also making a big investment. And what you're investing is your career. That if you take a bad job, you can derail your career. And today, that can happen very quickly. So you have to be very careful. Now I understand, you have to pay the bills, sometimes you have to take the job. But be very careful that you're also making an investment. Because we always tend to look at it from the company's point of view, that hey, if it doesn't work out, because they got the loud voice, so that's what you hear all the time on the news, that oh, when a hire doesn't work out, it's costing us this and this. Rarely they ever point out that when a candidate makes a bad move, that could completely derail their career. And that happened to me, so I'm just telling you from my personal experience, because I was always not paying attention to it. I took this job, that job, and eventually it catches up to you. So you want to be very careful. That's why the interviewing skill is the most important skill, so that that doesn't happen to you. Okay, now this is where, before you go, and so this is the game time, right? So we talked about, if I use a football metaphor, phone interviews, and before you get to the face-to-face interview, that's the pre-game. And in football, that's where most of the time is spent. The game time, if you notice it, is not that much. At most, we see 3 hours on TV. The actual football game is only 1 hour. So the game time is not that long. The pre-game could be 1 week. They may be preparing for the game. And that's what you're doing. You have to think of it like that you're playing this game. And this is part of your pre-game. So have a summary at the end, prepared ahead of time. And also start drafting the email that you will send after the interview. Okay? And then the 5 questions that matter in this phase are these 5 questions. So all of them apply. Do you understand the job? Can you do the job? Do you want the job? Can you do even more? And are you fun to be around? So these questions are not directly going to be asked. You have to make sure that they understand it. So they may ask a question where what they're really asking is this: do you understand the job? So you have to say, so let me tell you, you make sure that you understand whether I understand the job. And you explain to them how you understand the job. Because if you don't understand the job, then how can you possibly go to this step and explain to them whether you can do the job? Okay? So these questions are not directly going to be asked, but that's what they're really asking. When they're asking you about a particular skill, they're not asking you about the skill. What they're asking you is, can you do the job? Right? And then they want to know, and this is something where most people don't do, is you got to let them know that you want the job. You're interviewing with them, but if you don't let them know that you want the job, then maybe they think, maybe she doesn't want the job. So you're making it too difficult for them to give you the job now, right? This they don't ask you, by the way. Today, companies want more. So you have to say, by the way, I can do much more than what you're looking for. You got to bring it up. They're not going to ask you. And why that becomes important? When it's a competitive situation, if they have to pick one or the other, they can't tell, the one who can do something more is going to get the job. And I know that has happened to people, even in the field of medicine, where one person accepted the job and that person now has a very good career. And I asked him, I said, why did you get the job? He said, Jay, actually, I wasn't even the best candidate, but there was one thing they asked, whether I would be interested. It's something to do with whether he would be interested in being a director of the rehab center. And he said, yes. And the other guy said, no, what I'm interested in is just doing this epidural injection. He didn't get the job. And he said afterwards, I didn't even become the rehab director. But it made a big difference, right? So keep that in mind, that you want to let them know that you can do a lot more than what they're even asking. Okay, so this is part of your planning. This is something you have to plan ahead of time. You can't just, you can't think on your feet. Some of it you have to, but 80% of it you can plan ahead of time. Because when they say that this person is good on his feet, it's not true. What they've done is they've prepared. Okay, you can't just wing it. You've got to be prepared to wing it. So it looks like you're winging it, but you're not. Like, I prepared for this, even though it looks like I'm kind of winging it, but that's how it works. You got to prepare. Okay, now, you may have multiple face-to-face interviews. So for each one, you will have to prepare. The manager, maybe other colleagues, and you got to make sure you have the message, and you have what are the 3 things that they're looking for. Okay? So let me move on to the next slide. So what you want to do at this point is you want to reframe the interview. So you want to kind of, because interview has this connotation where you are kind of on defense. And what you want to do is be on offense, where you're also actively interviewing them. So what you really want to get to is that you want to have a strategic conversation. Now, what do I mean by strategic? Because that word gets used a lot. When they're hiring you for a full-time position, you essentially become a strategic hire. Means that they had choices. They could have easily gotten that work done abroad, or they could have gotten done through some temporary employee, or they could have automated it, but they didn't. They're bringing you on board. So they're bringing you on board because you suddenly become a strategic hire. means that they're not looking for a point solution. They're looking for you to help the company grow, and today you have to help the company scale. Because if you're not helping the company grow and scale, that company is going to become irrelevant pretty quickly. You know, there's this big company called Amazon out there, and they make all these other companies irrelevant. And they're not slowing down. They're going after everybody. You know, now they're going after FedEx and DHL and UPS. So they're not resting. Jeff Bezos is after everybody, okay? He's not going to rest till he conquers the world. And now he wants to go to different planets. So you can see, he's not even interested in Earth anymore. And then you're getting a strategic decision, okay? So make sure you try to reframe the interview. So you're going in there wanting to have a conversation. Because when you're having a conversation, then you can be yourself. You're not going there being scared, like, oh my God, they could ask this question, that question, because you're prepared. And if you're prepared, then you can have the conversation that you want. And that's what you should be aiming for. That's why there's a lot of preparation goes before you take the face-to-face interview. But before you can have a conversation, you got to design that conversation. So you got to know exactly how this, and again, this is like part of planning. It may not exactly work out, but if you don't plan it, then you're just completely kind of flying blind. So you want to make sure that you have an opening, a strategy for opening, a middle, a closing, and then a follow-up, okay? And one of the things I want to emphasize here is that the way you interview kind of shows what kind of employee you will be. If you go through this in a meticulous way, how you interview, because they're not actually putting you at work. The only way they're going to determine whether they hired you or not is how you interview. So how you interview makes a huge difference. Because if you're like all the other candidates, they can't tell a difference. But if you're different, they notice you immediately. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that you want to be different. And different somebody asked this question when I was giving this talk to college students. Said, how different should you be? And I said, you want to be different in a positive way, but you don't want to be different in a crazy way. So there is that fine line. You don't want to be off the wall. You want to be different in a good way. That you're willing to do things that shows that you're ready to step in and do the work the first day that you're hired. That's the difference I'm talking about, okay? Okay, so opening is sort of like, this is part of your designing the opening. So you're now at an interview and they want to start. Before they start, I think you can ask them, before we start, I have some questions that I'd like you to address so that I can focus on what's important to you. So what would I bring up? Here's what I would bring up. First of all, you want to get the job description and the resume off the table quickly. Because if the resume is still on the table, that means they're still thinking of you in the past. You want to be in the future. Past is not going to help you. They want to know what you can do for them in the future. And if they're stuck on your resume, then they're more interested in your past. That might be their interest, but that's not going to help you. So you want to make sure. So the first thing you do is you basically want to ask them whether you understand the job, okay? That here's my understanding of the job. And if the person says, yes, I think, get it validated, that this is how I understand the job. Is this correct? They say yes. At this point, the job description is off the table. You understand the job, okay? Then you want to move to this question. What are the 3 things you like about my background? You ask them right there, right up front. What are the 3 things you like about my background? And you write it down. Because this is information you're going to use in the end when you summarize. So write down 3 things they like. They might say, I like about your software background, I like about your project management background, I like about your communication background, things like that, and you write it down. These are things that they like about your background, okay? But then there's one thing they will have concern, because if they didn't have any concern, then they should be sending you a job offer, not an interview. So the common concern that they have, and this is the elephant in the room, by the way, whether you fit in their culture. The fit is the elephant in the room. Because if they didn't like you, they wouldn't invite you for a face-to-face interview. But now they're trying to find out, do you really fit in our culture here? Do you really get along with the people? Do people like you? Can you get along with the other people? So the fit becomes a very important part right here. Like when I was talking to a college student, I said that one of the elephant in the room for you guys is going to be whether you have the experience. And the one thing you never do is never disagree when they bring up a concern. Concern is something you don't disagree. You can't change people's mind. And you agree with it and just say, hopefully by the end of the interview, it'll be less of a concern. That's all you can do. You can only move them a little bit. You can't go, it's not even a concern. No. Otherwise, you should have had a job offer. Okay, so that's the opening. So now you set the stage. At this point, you have validated your understanding of the job. They've told you what are the 3 things they like, and they told you one main concern they have. They can't have too many concerns. Otherwise, why are they interviewing you face to face? So there can only be really one concern here. But you need to ask so that you know that that's out there that you need to address. And if you're not going to get a job when you're in a face-to-face interview, it's this thing. You didn't do a good job mitigating that. You have to address that head on at some point in the interview. Even at the end, do you have any concerns at this point? Because you cannot leave the interview until you have done a good job addressing as best as you can. Like I said, you can never completely make it a non-concern, but it should become a less of a concern. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm now going to use a football metaphor here, okay? And if you don't know football, you don't need to know football. But what I'm going to show you here is, in football, we have a field. And there's this green zone, and then we have this red zone. Okay, there's 2 red zones. And what red zone means is that it's between 0 to 20-yard line, right? And that's when you have the best chance of scoring a touchdown. In fact, they have a network called NFL Red Zone, where when a team goes into the red zone, they suddenly let you see it because people are interested in teams scoring touchdowns, right? So if you're not scoring touchdowns, you can't win. That even applies to job interviews. But you want to be here. You want to get into the interviewer's red zone because that's how you can score. If you're here, then they're telling you there's something wrong with your background. So you don't want to be here. But if you've done the phone interviews well and you've gotten a lot of information, then most of the time you want to get in here. Now here's what you have to be careful. You do not want to spend a lot of time here. This is when you can end up saying after the interview, my interview went really well. I answered all the questions. But you know what? You didn't score any touchdowns. What you did was you answered all the questions they had, like you were a good student. But you didn't get into the key things that they were interested in a way that immediately said, this person is not a candidate, this person is an employee. You didn't go from candidate to an employee. The only way you can do that is if you get in here. And I'm going to show you how you do that with an example. Okay? So you don't need to know about football, but the main thing is that this is where you can score touchdowns. And in this case, you can score points that results in a job offer. Okay? So getting more granular, what does that mean? Remember, you asked them 3 things that they were interested in. Okay? And these are the plays. So these are like plays. Okay? So I'm using a football metaphor. Say one thing, they said, no, we're looking for somebody who's really knows how to deliver customer experience. That becomes a play that you can now prepare ahead of time. They could say, we're looking for somebody who has really good problem-solving skills. Write it down, okay? Because now you got to come up with a play. Oh, also somebody who has, if it's a business development position, we're looking for somebody who's really experienced in relationship building. So let's say we have these 3. These are 3 plays that you now know that you got to somehow use during the interview in a way that allows you to score points. Is this clear? Right? So these are the 3 plays you have in your pocket that at some point in the interview, you're going to go from the green zone to the red zone. And then you're going to take out this play and score a touchdown. And I'm going to show you how you do that. Does this make sense? Okay, so here's how you do it. Okay, so now, at some point, this customer experience is going to come up. And you're going to basically explain to the interviewer what customer experience really means. And there are 7, you got to go deep here. You can't just say, oh, by the way, customer experience is how you win today in business. That alone sounds great. Hey, he really knows about customer experience, but that's not going to get you a job. That just means that you might have picked it up from CNBC or something, where somebody's talking about customer experience. You got to go deeper. So that's level 1. So the main idea is that customer experience, and that's true, by the way. Today, we all look for good customer experience. That today in business, if you want to win, you got to provide good experience. If you don't provide good experience, those customers are not going to come back. We have competition. So this is true, okay? This is not something you can argue with. Then you got to move to the next step. What is the process? What is the process of providing good customer experience? So now you go deeper and say, you got to treat customers with respect. And the way you treat customers with respect is you got to be reliable, you can get the job done, you got to be responsive, and you got to build relationship. That's what customers want. So now you've given them more detail on what the process is of delivering customer experience. Then, so that's level 2. Then you get to level 3 here, where you go much deeper and saying, let me explain to you what responsiveness means. Today, customers, you got to communicate them the way they want to communicate, not the way you want to communicate. So for example, this makes it a little bit involved now. I might be email, then you better respond to me by email. You might be by phone, then I better respond to you by phone. You might be through Facebook. You might be through LinkedIn. But you got to be responsive. You can't just say, we're not checking Facebook once a week or once a month. Well, too late. That customer is gone. So you got to be responsive in a way the customer wants you to respond. That's what makes you responsive. You can't just say, well, I'm not a Facebook guy. I'm not an Instagram guy. Hey, if you want to provide good customer experience, you better become all of that. That's the reality. Okay, but at the end, what you're trying to show is that consistency is key to providing customer experience. So at this level 3, you're going into more detail. Okay? And while you're doing this, you're trying to see whether the person, if you're resonating, if anything you're saying, it should sound like this makes a lot of sense. Okay, but you're getting deeper into it. Then you get to this level, okay? Now you've given them the overall framework on what makes a good customer experience. So now this is where you've shown your knowledge of how to deliver customer experience. But now you're going to give them a universal example. And you can pick from any, like you can pick from Amazon, Apple, Nordstrom, Ritz-Carlton, or anyone that you might be familiar, or Costco. So I'll take Apple, for example. So last year, I wanted to get my battery replaced. They had a program at the end of last year where you could get your battery replaced for like $30. So I called Apple, and they were busy at that time. And they said, you can leave your number, and somebody will call you back. But I said, no, I'll just stay on the line. So I decided to stay on the line. So then the next thing that comes on, it says, oh, while you're staying online, what kind of music do you want to listen to? And they gave me choices, which was like, wow, I'm getting choices to listen to music? That has never happened before. Do you want to listen to rock music? Do you want to listen to pop? Or do you want to listen to jazz? So I said, okay, since they're giving me a choice, I picked jazz. And the jazz music they had was really, was clear too. It wasn't like scratchy stuff, okay? And it was really good jazz music. And I listened to it for a minute, and the guy came on. Can I help you, sir? I said, couldn't you have taken a little longer to come on? The music was so good. And he apologized. I said, no, I'm just pulling like here. But it just goes to show that, and the reason I'm talking about it, because I call other companies, I don't get that anywhere. That's good customer experience. Somebody thought about that. Somebody at Apple thought about that when people are staying online, give them a choice, give them some control, what they want to listen to. And I felt good. And then, okay, so now you've given a universal example, okay, that nobody's going to argue. Because Apple is known for providing good experience. Otherwise, they wouldn't be one of the top 3 most valuable companies. But then you immediately talk about the specific example where you have provided a good customer experience. So like when I was talking to these college students, they were like looking like, oh my God, I said, look, most of you have worked at McDonald's. McDonald's today provides very good customer experience. I said, take that and show them, what did you do, whether you worked at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts or any place. Because customer experience, you can provide any job you have. And you can talk about it, that let me tell you what I did. I made sure that everybody that I serviced, they left smiling. And somehow I saw them again. And that tells me that they liked my customer experience that I provided, that they came back to the same McDonald's. Okay? I mean, that's your story, right? You got to have a story. Okay, so now you got to do this in 5 minutes, but you got to see, like, is this something that is resonating? Then you ask them. So this is where you're now collaborating and say, so what do you think? What do you think? What do you do that's different? And here, you're giving the interviewer a chance to tell you now, what you said made a lot of sense. I haven't had anybody go through it the way you just explained it. But here's some of the things that we do. That's what you want. You want that collaboration now. So now, you guys are not interviewing. You guys are like kind of collaborating to come up with something that could even be better. Right? So that's what you're doing here. And then you move to the last step. So this is where you're kind of closing the deal. So what you're doing is you're telling here, and then you're selling, and here you're closing. So now, what you're saying is like, we're aligned. Because they just told you that, I like what you just said, but here's some other things we do. So now you have an alignment. Okay? So then you do is that say, okay, now we're aligned, so let's team up. Why don't me and your team work together? And we can deliver even a better customer experience. So at this point, what you have done essentially is you've gone from being a candidate to being an employee. Because you've given them, look how deep this is. There are so many skills that goes into this. Okay? You have one skill that's there that you don't even think about. Thinking skills. You thought about this. You just didn't show up and say, yeah, I provided some good customer experience and customers were happy. No, you're going much deeper. You're telling them, this is the main thing that wins. Here's the process. Here's a universal example. Here's how I provide it. And here's what I want to find out about what you do. And why don't we do it together? Hey, at that point, you just became an employee. Whether they told you or not, at that point they could say, stop, here's the offer. That may not happen, but you're close. Does this make sense? So you got to do this with every single thing that they're interested in. This could apply to problem solving. It could apply to relationship building. Because what they want to see is that you have some thought on each of these areas that are important to them. Because they want to hire you to win. And if you're not demonstrating that you have deep thought in these areas, then why would that instill any confidence in them that you can get the job done? So that's what you want to do. Okay? Okay, now we're going to, so that middle is where your job is to take those 3 plays that you have, whether it's customer experience, problem solving, relationship building, could be project management, whatever. You have to find that out in the phone interview. And then you make sure that you don't leave without using those plays, because that's what's important to them. That's what they think they need to win. But at some point you have to close the interview. Okay, so at the end, now typically what I found is that if you're really on your game, they will give you more time. And normally that's a good sign. So I've had people who had been scheduled to have a 45-minute interview, and it has gone on for like an hour and a half. Because like I said, when you're having a conversation, they might tell you we have 45 minutes, but if they're really enjoying the conversation, they're not going to abide by that 45 minutes. That's a made-up number. Oh, we're making a big strategic hiring decision. Forget about 45 minutes. Oh, that's it, the interview is over, 45 minutes left. No, they want to make sure that you're the right hire. So the thing you want to do at the end is you want to make sure that you answered all these questions, okay? So you can ask them directly. This is where you can directly ask them. So, Mr. Interviewer or Miss Interviewer, do you think I understand the job? They say yes. Do you think I can do the job? Hopefully they'll say yes. And then you can ask them, do you have any concern? Because this is the last chance you get to address any concern that they are willing to express to you. They might say, I like everything, but there's this one concern, because you don't want to leave the interview without addressing that head on. Because this is where you're doing it face to face. Because after that, who knows what's going to happen. So you want to leave addressing it right there. If they don't have any concern, then you're practically done at this point. There's nothing more you can really do at this point. Now, this is the question that I get a lot of feedback, that a lot of people like, oh, compensation. Oh, I don't like to bring up compensation. So why did I put this here? Okay. Talking about money is uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. People don't like to talk about money. The conversation tends to change. But the reason I always say you want to bring up money is because when you're interviewing, there aren't that many uncomfortable questions that ever come up. But when you have a job, there are going to be a lot of uncomfortable questions that are going to come up. And you want to find out how the manager or whoever that you'll be reporting to, how they deal with uncomfortable situation. And if they don't handle this well, then it kind of tells you that when you join the company, that there are going to be a lot of things where they're going to have to give you some criticism, or you may ask for them, and they may not handle it well. So this is your way of gauging how well they handle uncomfortable question. And the reason why you want to bring up money is for a number of reasons. Because you want to show that they are making an investment. So this is an investment type of a question. This is not like a salary. And if you have done a good job where you have demonstrated that you really understand the job and you can do the job, then this should not be a difficult question. Because if you're not willing to bring up money, then they might think that you're desperate. That, you know, hey, I am good and it's going to cost you. It's going to be a big investment you're going to make because I'm going to deliver. Because if you're delivering an interview, then you're almost telling them that I'm going to deliver after I get on the job. That's an investment they're going to have to make. So keep that in mind, that this is not just a salary question. This is an investment conversation you're having. They're making an investment and you're ready to make an investment. So the way you handle it is very important. So you have to give some thought. And then you want to close it out. So at this point, you don't have any more questions. So the last impression do matter. And what you want to do at this point is to summarize that you understand the job, you can do the job, and they already told you 3 things that they like about you. And then you never want to leave without this. And I call this the Simba moment. And what that means is, if you're all old enough, you remember the movie Lion King, right? Where Simba just couldn't wait to be king. Well, you can't wait to get started. So I call it the Simba moment. And you've got to let them know that when can I get started? Because if you're not that excited to get started, then they might think like, she likes the job, but I don't know whether she really wants to take this job. So you've got to say it, because if you're not saying it, then they don't believe it. I like it, this is a great fit, and I just can't wait to get started. And if they smile, you're getting the job. And if they look scared, then I don't know what that means, but not good. So you want to make sure that you make them smile, that I've done all this and now I just can't wait to get started. And, one time I went for an interview and the person, I didn't use this, okay, but somehow that person, the owner wanted me to start right away. And I was like totally caught off guard. I said, right away? I have my suit on. I said, I can't work here with my suit on. He said, why not? I said, why not? So I started. Okay, then the follow-up. And you can read this when I send you the slides. But the one thing I want to point out here is this. Always try to, because remember, you are not just interviewing, you're basically doing a job. And you want to arrange a follow-up, a 15-minute call. Whether you decide not to accept it or whether they decide not to hire you. And why is this so important? It's important because when you're interviewing, again, it comes down to marketing, right? You spend a lot of time. You put in so much effort knowing each of the individuals, and you're now at their site. They should become part of your network, whether you join them or not. And believe it or not, let's say they decide not to hire you. They may have an internal candidate they pick because of political reason. But if that person doesn't work out or a new position opens up, if you made an impression, they're not going to forget you. And also, if you put them on the LinkedIn network, then any blog you write or any video you put or anything, they're going to see it. And you stay in touch with them, okay? And they might have a position that will open up in the future, or they may know somebody else that's looking and say, there's this person that really made an impression. Unfortunately, we only had one position, so we couldn't hire, her. But I think you should interview her. So remember, once the interview is over, it's not the end of the world. Stay in touch with them because they spent a lot of time with you and you spent a lot of time with them. So always try to negotiate this 15-minute call. The purpose of this call is not to change their mind if you decide not to. And you also offer it to them too. Say, look, whether I accept or not, let's have a 15-minute call and debrief. And you may find out is there anything you could have done that would have made a difference. You got to do it. Because again, this is part of being a professional. sometimes you don't get everything you want, but if you handle it well, then you may end up getting something sooner. Okay? Oh, and you know who this guy is? This guy, right? He's pretty famous, right? And we all know who this is. This guy knows how to get a job. And what you need to understand from him, you don't have to like him, but if you want to get a job, this is what you have to do. He wrote a letter, okay? He wanted a job. Nobody knew that he was still even looking for a job, but he wrote a letter. And this is something you can all write too. He said, I'm writing as a formal official, deeply concerned with the institution of the presidency and the Department of Justice. I realize that I'm in the dark about many facts, but I hope my views may be useful. And he wrote it to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, titled Mueller's Obstruction Theory. Wow, that is genius, okay? I'm telling you, you don't have to like the guy, but this is how you get a job. If you know somebody that has a real problem, you write a letter. Put it on LinkedIn and say, I can solve your problem. And guess who liked it? He liked it. And guess what? He got the job. And I don't know how the interview went, but I bet you got 5 questions so let's just say, what are the 5 questions that you asked? So you must have asked him. This was his interview. Bill, do you understand the job? Yes, I know exactly what I have to do. Good. Can you do the job? Mr. President, I was the Attorney General under George H.W. Bush, so obviously I know how to do the job. He got that check mark. Do you want the job? Look, I went out of way to write this. This was his opening paragraph. This was his opening paragraph the memo that he wrote, right? So, he wants the job. Otherwise, why would he write the memo? Can you do even more? Absolutely. And he is doing more. He's completely redefining the role of a president. And then the last one, are you fun to be around? Now, that's a tricky one. He might have answered this way. I don't know. I wasn't there, but this is sort of like, he said, look, Mr. President, I don't play golf, but if you hire me, I'll drive your golf cart. And he got the job. Now, I don't know if that happened or not, but I'm pretty sure it was close enough, okay? And now he gets to decide how the Justice Department is run. So as you can see, getting a job, you can get it many ways. You can get it by so we think first of all, remember one thing, there are no rules. There are no rules, you define the rules. When it comes to getting a job, we always have this thing, oh no, we can't do this, we can't do that. No, you can do anything, as long as you're not committing a crime. So he wrote a letter, and now he's got the job. Why can't we all do that? I do that, by the way. I will send a letter to people, and what's the worst that can happen? They won't reply, or they say, sorry, not interested. That's not bad, right? So write a letter. If you know somebody that has a problem, go write a letter to them. So there is this red thread of job interviewing. Red thread from Greek mythology, where Theseus goes into the cave to slay the monster Minotaur, and his girlfriend Ariadne, I think gives him a red thread, so that when he goes in the cave after he slays the monster, he can use the red thread to come out of the cave. So that red thread here is this question: can you get the job done? Each of this step, resume, phone interviews, face-to-face interviews, reference checks, decision time. This is the one question. There's one question you need to focus on, is this. This is the only question that really matters. There's only one question. This is what you want to keep emphasizing, that you can get the job done at each of the steps. So this is the red thread of job interviewing. There are not that many questions. People always say there are 50 questions, 100 questions. There's only one question. Because companies are not hiring you for anything else besides this. You have to get the job done the way they want it done, okay? So at this point, I've spent a lot of time talking about interviewing, the 5 interviews, and you're asking, what do I do tomorrow? This is what I suggest. Make a video, okay? Do a video resume, where you have an opening, where you talk about your what and why. Your middle is how you have done it. And then you have a call to action where you say, if you would like to continue this conversation, give me a call or contact me. Now, you can do it just for yourself. 1 take, 2 take, 3 take. Don't spend too much time. Don't try to be perfect. The reason why you should do this is because you need to know how you come across, how you sound, and how you look. And believe it or not, And here's the real thing. I give this challenge in every talk I give. And so far, I have gotten no videos from anybody. None. This is the hardest thing for people to do, which kind of surprises me, because with all these things we have, you think that this would be like the easiest, right? You just put a record and say, hi, my name is Jay Oza, and I'm a speaker, something like that, right? Nobody does it. Nobody does it. It's very difficult. So let me ask you, how many of you are going to do it? Anybody? No? Oh, we got one person. I'm going to get your name and see if he does it. So far, I get everybody raise their hands, and I haven't gotten a single person who have sent it to me. Okay, so this is not that difficult, but I'm just saying that if you can't record it, then you can't go to an interview without knowing what you look like, what you sound like, and how you are answering these questions, because what you're not seeing, the interviewer is. So, like, I'm going to find out when I look at that, what do I come across like in this, when I'm getting this recorded here. Okay? And then at some point, if you really want to go all out, you can make it look, professional. You can get a professional like Don here, and he will do a professional job, and then you can put it on YouTube, and they have it. This is part of marketing. Okay, now, if this is uncomfortable, you're going to have to get comfortable with this, because this is reality. Today, video cannot be ignored. You've got to get comfortable with video, because people need to see you. People need to see you, what you look like, how you handle yourself, because there's no other way. If they see you with a short video, and it's got to be short, then they say, I'm going to call this person. So I'll spend some time and get comfortable with this, okay? I put this slide in there because a lot of times people come to this lecture and they're saying, like, I got a lot of information in this talk, but how do I take it to the next level? So I have to explain it to them, that what you got is a lot of information in this talk. I walked you through why this interviewing is the most important skill, and the resume, the phone interviews, the face-to-face interviews, all of this. But knowing to doing is really hard. And one of the things about when you are looking for a job or changing career, 1 month can easily turn into 3 months. 3 months can turn into 6 months. 6 months can turn into a year. And time just goes by very quickly. I see this all the time. And after a year, people start losing confidence, and they're completely out of the market. And we always see in the unemployment report that the unemployment is 3.6. I'm not sure how real that number is, to be honest with you, because I see a lot of people out of a job that should be working, and they're not. And it's not like they're not trying. They just don't get any response. So that 3.6 could also indicate that, because that's a statistic, the number is based on the overall pool, and if more and more people are not looking, then that number starts looking much better. So I don't think that number 3.6 is, and again, the other thing that could make that number 3.6 is that a lot of people take 2-3 jobs now. And they have a lot of these, the gig economy. So people are taking a lot of these gigs and they consider it as they're working. But they don't have a good job. And this presentation is about getting a good job. And then the other thing is, from doing, you have to improve. And if you improve, then you will succeed. Okay, so one of the things that I used to coach, so then I decided that what I do now is I put in a workshop. So a lot of people are not ready for coaching. They need workshop where we go through all of these things so you find out where your weaknesses are. Because when I start coaching people and I find out that they go for an interview, but then they had a problem because they didn't qualify the job correctly, so that phone interview was the issue. So with workshop, you will know exactly where your problem is. So I started offering this workshop, and I charge $349, but if you attend it, then I can deduct $50. If this price is too high, let me know. We'll work something out. But I don't want you to be out of a job for too long, okay? So keep that in mind. We'll do it out of my office. We'll have like no more than 7 people. And at the end of that whole day, you will have gone through you'll have a message, you'll have what your resume, we'll get your resume checked out, phone interviews, face-to-face interviews, even reference checks. And at that point, you'll have everything you need, okay? So keep this in mind. And at this point, I want to thank you all for coming, and I'll open it up for Q&A. Thank you for coming. Do you have any questions before you leave?
Just your email or...
Oh, my card is there, okay?
I'm sorry, your card.
Just if you leave, I'm going to send you more information. If you print your name on that sign-in sheet, I will send you the presentation with my ebook and everything, okay?
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you.
Right. So let me thank you all for coming, and at this point, let's open it up for Q&A. Yeah.
You know, in my recent phone interviews, there's been a lot of questions about leadership.
Right.
And, you know, I don't know what your experience is, what's your, you know, three-sentence answer to that. What are your thoughts on that?
So they're asking you about, so have you had leadership?
Yeah, what's your experience with leadership? You know, what's your definition of leadership?
Right.
Things like that.
If I was asked that question, I would just basically say, it's basically asking what your leadership style is, right? And if I was asked that question, I would say my leadership style is that I'm tough, I'm fair, and I'm kind. And then go through each one of them. That, you know, a leader has to be tough. Because if you're not tough, then you can't be a leader. Second is that you do have to be fair. Fair means that if somebody's working harder, you got to be fair in that sense. You can't say everybody's equal. There's a difference between fair and equal. And the most important is that as a leader, you are still dealing with human beings. You have to be kind. Because if you're not kind, then people are not going to work hard for you. And at the end, you're not there to lead. You're there to create leaders. So that you are creating leaders. You're not there like, I'm the one in charge. I want to make you a leader. I want to make you a leader. So that way, I can know that the company is in good standing because I'm creating leaders. And you constantly have to be, because one of the things that you have to ask is, what are the key functions of a leadership, right? Personnel, people. You have to really come across as a people person, that you know how to deal with people, because they're the ones who are going to do all the work for you. You're just a leader. And they're trying to do work for you that they don't even know they can do. And that's what a leadership is. Again, that's my answer. But you need to show that not only that you have thought about it, so like what you can do is that slide right here that I went through, right? Okay, so this is what you need to do. Take this slide and explain leadership, the leadership play. How would you do it? So you would have a statement that without leadership, companies cannot succeed. That could be your statement, that you need leadership. Then you can say, what does leadership mean? And I just gave you what I would say, that you have to be tough, you have to be fair, and you have to be kind. Then here, you would go and elaborate it. What does toughness mean? You have to be tough on yourself, because if you're not working late, then how could you expect other people to work late? So then you elaborate each one, what that means. What does fairness mean? What does kind mean? Because if somebody has a family issue, as a relative or a loved one that has cancer, you have to be kind. Because people, they feel kindness. Kindness is something that's given. So that's what makes a good leader. So if you explain that, then you can give a universal example of somebody that everybody acknowledges was a great leader. It could be Abraham Lincoln if you want to be that big, or somebody that's universally known to be an example of a great leader. Then you can give your specific example where you actually had to demonstrate leadership skills. Then you can say, well, what do you think? What do you do here? What's your definition of a good leader? And then say, you know what? I can help you lead this company to win. So now you've gone through all 7 levels, explain what leadership really means to you. I don't know, that's kind of the way I would do it. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Any other question? If there are no questions, then any other question, or I'll just...
The resume should only go back 10 years.
I'm sorry?
A resume of your experience should only really include your last 10 years.
It's not the 10 year, it's not like chronological, it's like what you have done. If something is relevant, thank you very much, Sonia. If you have done something that's relevant, then it should be in the resume. Like I said, you may have to tweak it for a particular position. So that's what I would answer. So if something is not, like I did I was a techie, so I did a lot of software engineering. But if I'm not pursuing that job, then I don't want to, it's not relevant to the resume for a position. Like if I'm looking to do this type of work, to give more talks, then I don't know what, that software engineering background doesn't really, I would mention it that I worked as a software engineer, but I wouldn't put more emphasis on that because it's not relevant to the position that I'm going for. So you have to make that judgment based on what kind of position you're targeting. The one thing I forgot to mention, because I took that slide out, each of these steps, like a resume part is like a targeting. You're targeting particular position that's in your wheelhouse. Then you go from a targeted to the next phase is qualified. So I call it, it's a targeted qualified performance that's validated, negotiated, that results in an excellent job offer. So you're kind of going through that step. So you target the position that you feel that, hey, this is where I can add value. Then you qualify it after you get a call. Then you put together a performance like what we just went through, where leadership might come up. If leadership is very important to the company, then you got to create a performance, right? Then you got to get it validated. Somebody has to validate you. You know, this guy was really good performer, but now we need to know whether he was for real. And somebody has to validate that yeah, you know, he was a great leader here. And then you can negotiate. And if you do all that, then you will end up with an excellent job offer. But you got to keep that in mind. Yeah, sure.
I'm just curious how to explain my situation. I'm ready to go back to my career, but I took a 5-year break. I became mom, and then I wanted to focus, stay at home and help raise my child. Now I'm ready to go back. How should I explain my situation in a cover letter or in a resume somewhere that why I took the break and what was the reason? Is anybody curious? Is it
Right.
that,
Right.
or do I define myself in the interview?
No, I think if you took a break for, like you basically to have a child, right?
Yeah.
Then you just say it, that I took a break. But what did you learn from that? Because there's a lot of things you learn from having children. There's a lot of responsibility, right? So you said, look, you know, I took that. It's how you explain things. And there's a lot that you do. Like I can't do that job, right? That's a job, right? Having a child is a job. You gotta do so much when you're taking care of children. So you said, you know, I had work, but let me tell you, when I had a child, that was much harder work. So now you're basically making it sound like, you know what? This lady was working. She's just doing different kind of work. But she was still working, and she learned a lot from that work. Because, you know, getting kids out of bed and taking them to there's a lot of stuff that you have to do. But you got to take 1 or 2 points and saying that handling a children is no different from dealing with employees at work, you know. You got to know how to deal with them. So I'm learning. So even though, you know, I thought like after work I would be done with children, but guess what? It's not that much different. So it's like you got to have some humor into it. You got to inject some humor into it, because you can't just make them think like, oh well, since you didn't do this type of work, that work is not that important. You got to make it seem like, let me tell you, this is a very important job that I was doing, and now I'm ready to get back and taking all the stuff I've learned, raising a child, that I can apply. Because you develop maturity, so you got to come up with things like, you know, what did you learn from taking care of being out of work and raising a child? Responsibility, maturity, all that stuff. That's very relevant. See, a lot of moms don't do that. And they just say, oh, I was just a mom. No, you were not a mom. You were a CEO in a way. You were running a household. But it's how you explain it. And if you don't explain it, don't let them define you. So that's what I'm trying to say. Don't let them define you. You define yourself.
The Old Bridge Public Library will be closing in 30 minutes.
So
please bring all items to the front desk.
if you have a narrative, then stick with it. And if you do that, then they'll be convinced. Because that's your narrative. They can't take that away. So just pick like 2-3 things that you learned that is transferable when you get back to the workforce. You know, hey, I'm much more mature now. I'm much more, time management. I've learned a lot of skills being a mom. So these are the things you have to explain, that it's a different kind of work, but nevertheless, it is a lot of work. Okay? Yeah.
Somebody else had a second question.
Did you have a question?
3 questions.
Oh, 3 questions. Okay, so let's...
Hopefully quick. We talked about compensation.
Yeah.
So some are pretty easy. They say, you know, estimated salary or salary is X. You know, so I guess, you know, I look at it and, you know, am I comfortable or not? And, you know, I'm not the youngest person anymore, and job search is now about 2 months old, so my expectations are dropping,
Right.
which, you know, I'm like, am I desperate? Am I, you know, but anyway, I guess, you know, I look at it and I guess I have to make a decision, and the number's much lower than it was
Right.
even 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Other times they say, give me a salary range.
Right.
To me, that's very, very difficult.
Right.
You know, any thoughts on
Right.
how one might define that? Or?
Yeah, salary, it's one of those things, because again, one of the things I pointed out on that slide is that if you have options, then you can definitely be very firm about that, right? But let's say you don't have options and you got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Then you got to be just saying, listen, I'm ready to start. Because if you do a good job, because once you're in, so here's the thing, you got to get the job. Because if you're out of a job for too long, then it gets more and more difficult. So you just say, listen, I just want to come and add value. And I'm ready to accept this job. And then later on, you can always renegotiate your salary, but you got to get in. So I would not, in your case, I would not play hardball.
Okay.
Because you got to get a job. Because then once you have a job, then you know what you need to do to get a better job. But you got to get that job so that way you're not, bleeding here, because you need to pay the bills. So at that point, I would just, because here's a situation, because I know somebody who didn't do that because he had a job offer, but he had to work at nights and he didn't take it. And he still doesn't have a job. And I said, you should have taken that job, because once you had the job, then you could look for a better job that you didn't have to work at nights. It was like a network engineer or something. But don't be out of a job for too long, because then you start losing confidence. And if any job, even if it's volunteer, you want to do something, because if you're volunteering for somebody, that's still a job. Because that you can say that, hey, here's the value that I'm adding to this particular place. It looks like that you're doing something. You just come across totally in a different way when you're working. It's not necessarily the pay, it's just that you come across like somebody who really enjoys what he's doing. You just sound different when you're working.
Yeah.
And if you're saying like, oh, I'm currently not working, then they're thinking like, wait a second, why? You're not. If you say, look, right now I'm looking for a job where I can add value, but in the meantime, I'm coaching children, I'm doing this work, I'm doing this work, I'm doing this work, so I'm really doing, and then if I find the right job, I'm ready to come in and add value. You come across in a much more positive manner. Yeah, go ahead.
You already asked the first question.
Oh, okay.
I must say this session is very insightful. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad you liked
I
it.
don't think so. It should be free.
All right, guys, write a check before you leave.
Two questions are one. The first question is you talked about the 15-minute debrief request.
Yeah.
When is the right time to bring up that question?
Yeah, before you actually saying, listen, before I come to, this is not like meant as because a lot of stuff that's kind of role playing that we could flesh out, but saying, here's something that I'd like to, would you be open to it, like that, that whether I don't know how this is going to go. I mean, right now I'm definitely, because the more you want to let them know that you're interested in the job, but it may be that afterwards we may find out that I'm not a fit, or you may think it may not be a mutual fit, but no matter what, would you be open to having a 15-minute call, depending on whichever way it goes, and say, get the yes. That's all. And the reason for that is that I would like to find out, because it also works from their point of view too. Because see, again, you can't teach people networking. They gotta be good at it, right? You might know other people that you may be able to recommend. Because remember, when they're bringing you for face-to-face, they must see something in you to do that, because it's costing them money too. And now they say, this person didn't work out, but he may know. It makes you look good too, because you may know other people and say, hey, by the way, I just interviewed this guy, John. Hey, John, by the way, that position that I did not accept, by the way, I know somebody else who may be a good fit. Would you be interested in talking to that person? So suddenly you are now brokering introduction that way. So it works both ways. You can help them, they can help you. So I would do it like just before you decide to go for the face-to-face interview.
And the second question was, your date for the workshop, is it fixed? And do you have a spot offer if people sign up right now?
Yeah, I'm basically trying to figure out what date to do it, whether I should do it on a weekday or a weekend. So I'm kind of keeping it flexible. Right now, that's probably the early June is when I can do it now. And I want to make sure that there are going to be enough people there so that you're not just hearing me, because that one is not going to be me talking. It's going to be you, because that's why it's a workshop. You're going to be working with each other and do a lot of role playing so that when you're interviewing with somebody, you will have gone through each of the steps, like resume, phone interviews, and face-to-face interviews. And another thing I didn't get to talk about, reference checks are very important, by the way. Most people do not spend time on reference checks. If I'm using you as a reference, you're Jim, right?
Yeah.
I have to coach you, because you could actually hurt me big time. Because if I'm not coaching you well, because those questions that we went over, you have to make sure that those questions are answered now through you. You know, he can do the job, he wants the job, and he's fun to be around. Because if they want to know if I'm fun to be around, they're going to ask that to you, that, hey, what is Jay like? Is he somebody that you can spend some time with? And like, how did you spend time with away from work? Was he just basically all work and no play? What was he like? And those questions become very important. And if you don't do a good job with that, that could actually hurt you, but it can also help you get a better salary, actually. Because I know that one time, I have a boss that I worked for, and I went to him too many times. And every time I have used him, he got me the job. Because he was that good. Like, you remember that movie, right? Devil Wears Prada. Do you remember that movie? Huh?
Devil's Advocate?
No, Devil Wears Prada with Miranda Priestley, that played by Meryl Streep. And she was that tough boss. But you know what she does at the end? She writes this reference letter. Sachs, right? What's that? Andy Sachs? That was played by Anne Hathaway, right? And she left the job and she wants to go work for a reputable, like a New Yorker. And Miranda Priestley sends a reference. It said, out of all the assistants that I've had, she was the biggest disappointment. And if you don't hire her, you're an idiot. That's a great reference. She's not saying she's great, she's a big disappointment, but there was something in her that I liked, and if you don't hire her, then you're a total idiot. And she got the job. So you need somebody who can give a reference like that. Watch that ending scene if you ever watch that movie. It's like a very short scene. He said, I just got a fax from Miranda Priestley, and then he reads it, and she put that down, that she was one of my biggest disappointment. And I said, I got to use that in my talk, because that's a great reference.
In your career coaching, you do it like by the hour, you can call and just...
I don't do by hour, I do by session, because I think if you're good, you should do it by session, because I don't like to cut it like, because I don't do it by hour, because the thing is that when you do it by hour, that's like saying somebody that you may not be that good, because you're watching the hour rather than the results.
Oh.
So I usually tell them I do it by session, and then what happens is, because most of the time, it's not me that says it's over, it's usually the other person. Because I coach these military veterans, and many of them have a lot of issues. And I give them all the time in the world. And most of the time, when I'm coaching, people always want to end it. Because there's also a limit. Because these are pretty intense, right?
Yeah.
These are pretty intense, and after a while, you just can't think anymore. And because like a lot of the people I coach in the military, they have PTSD. So I have to be very careful on how I can't push them too hard, because they can't function. Many of them need a dog to function.
So we could just email you at the JOZA at winnings.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. So the purpose of this is like, for some people, they might need a little tweak here and there. For some people, they may need a workshop. And for some people, if they've already, so the way it works is, if you're just starting out, right, then you should get a workshop. That way it'll accelerate it. But let's say you're already interviewing and you're getting to the end, you're getting face-to-face interviews, but you're not closing the deal, then I think coaching would make sense there. Because otherwise, like resume and all that gets to be too much, and it's hard to, so if you're getting to the end stage where you're interviewing, but somehow you're not able to get the offer, then you may need some coaching there to make the difference. But if you're not even getting any calls, then there are some other, then workshop probably is more appropriate. Otherwise, it would get too costly. And I'm not here to, get you so dependent that you're working with me for 3 months. I mean, this has got to happen fast. If it's not happening fast, then I'm not the right person to work with. Okay?
Thank you.
So at this point, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Don,
Thank you
for
so much.
videotaping it. And if you have any questions, and I got all your emails, so hopefully by tomorrow I will send you this presentation along with my ebook, which is a good book. I wrote it, so I'm biased.
Thank you
And
so
then,
much for that.
okay, thank you. Thank you for coming. I know it was a rough day today to come. I didn't know how many people would show up. I thought I would be just talking to the camera. I was just talking to Don. I said, Don, this is going to be just me talking to the camera, but I'm glad you all showed up. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Jen.